Everyone, welcome back. And today I'm going to doing what if the Roman Empire comes back in 2025. So the Roman Empire consists of England and Wales, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, Spain, Portugal, and Italy, Switzerland, Austria, a little bit of Hungary, the Balkans, Greece, Turkey, Armenia, a little bit of Azerbaijan and Georgia, a little bit of Iraq, most of Syria, a little bit of Jordan, Israel, Egypt, the northern parts of Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco. So, the first thing we pretty much see the Romans doing is trying to conquer the rest of the countries that are pretty much already destroyed. Basically, like Austria. Austria is basically already collapsing, but it's still managed, I guess. So they're gonna try to take over the remaining countries. So as they do, they declare war on Austria, Hungary, Romania, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, Morocco, and Tunisia. So with these countries kind of working together, I mean they're working together for the same purpose, trying not to be annexed by the Romans. So, but eventually over here, we already see Austria collapsing. Soon, I mean, yeah, basically, Austria doesn't have a chance against the Romans, so they pretty much already surrender. For the Hungarians, Budapest is already captured, making them already surrender as well. And same fate as Romania. Their capital is already captured. Pretty much, they already surrender. And then, as for Georgia and Azerbaijan, their capitals isn't captured, but they're extremely weak. So Georgia and Azerbaijan already surrenders. And over here, we already see that Jordan, Syria, and Iraq, yeah, pretty much their capital's already gone, so they pretty much already surrender. And then for Tunisia and Morocco, Tunisia doesn't have any coast, so they surrender. Then Morocco does have coast, but then eventually, yeah, they might as well just surrender. So with this, let's look at the peace treaty. So here's the peace treaty. We see that Austria, Hungary, Romania, the other Caucasus in the Middle East, and the northern part of Africa. The countries that have been in war. We see that those countries have been fully annexed. And now the second thing they're going to try to do is to look over to the British Isles. They already taken over England and Wales, so might as well take over the rest. They declare war on Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Ireland. So basically, they're trying to get a lot more influence with in Europe, I guess. I mean, they pretty much already have a lot of influence, but trying to spread their culture, I guess. So, but also with the Roman Empire coming back, Latin is also coming back. So no more Italian, no more French. Yeah, it's now it's Latin. So with the Romans entering through Scotland, we pretty much just see Scotland already falling, and then they land in Northern Ireland. Supported by the Irish, they are able to hold them off, but then eventually, with more troops coming, Dublin is captured, and then Ireland surrenders. And then, pretty much in the peace treaty, we already see that Scotland, Northern Ireland and Ireland has been fully annexed, and then eventually the borders are fully erased. And pretty much they already controlled the British Isles and a lot of the world. Well, not all, but a good portion, I think. But they would try to go after some more weaker nations. That's the only thing they have. So, or they would try to attack smaller ones, just like the Netherlands, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Moldova. And then eventually, let's just say that to those were a few battles, and then Amsterdam is captured, Prague, Bratislava, and I forgot the capital Moldova, but it's also captured. So, with those four countries now joining the Roman Empire, we see that Europe is about, I mean, we pretty much see some alliances being formed. And then this alliance will be in Africa, and then it'll be Western Sahara, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, South Sudan, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Chad, Niger, Mali, and Mauritania, I think. So those countries will be forming one alliance, and then we see another alliance being formed. And then that is with Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. With these countries now forming an alliance, it'll be harder for them to invade. And then eventually, I mean, the Roman Empire will stop expanding like, to stop other alliances from forming. But then eventually, a few years go by, they decide to go in the Middle East. And then they declare war on Iran. So here, we see some Roman troops are already storming into their territory, but then eventually they're halted. I mean, we're stalemated a bit by the mountainous terrain, but then eventually, once they're able to get past the terrain, they are able to capture Tehran. And then eventually, more of the Persian Gulf, and then eventually, Iran surrenders. And then, since they're there, might as well declare war on Afghanistan. And you know what? Let's just Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan. Yeah, so basically, all of the Stan countries are now in war. Well, except for Pakistan. You know what? Pakistan too. And now, with these, I mean, the Roman Empire against the Central Asian countries, you're pretty much Kazakhstan would be the strongest one. So they would be able to liberate a little bit of Iran, but then eventually they're falling back, and then they start entering through Pakistan and Afghanistan. Soon, they lost the access to the sea, and then Islamabad falls, Afghanistan falls, and then Pakistan fully surrenders. Tajikistan falls, Kyrgyzstan already surrenders, and then they start to going into Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. So with the Kazakhs now pumping a lot of more people into the war, they're able to liberate a little bit of Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, managing to even reach Tajikistan. But then eventually they're cut off from the Caspian Sea completely, and then making them have to retreat over to here, trying to regain the Caspian Sea, which also makes Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan fully surrender again. And then eventually we see them going up to this lake, fully capturing it, and then they start a spearhead to this other lake. Soon, Uzbekistan surrenders, the rest of Turkmenistan falls, and then eventually, with the Kazakhstan all alone, they also surrender. So, with this, let's look at the peace treaty. So, here's the peace treaty. We see that the Central Asian countries are now fully annexed, and then the rest of Europe sees this: Germany, Poland, Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. So, yeah, with them already seeing this as a threat, Russia declares war, and so does Ukraine and Belarus. And then might as well just throw in Germany and Poland. So, with the troops already stationed in Kazakhstan and some in the Caucasus, they are able to advance a lot into Russia, but then also at the same time with the Siberian winter, they're into a stalemate, but then eventually they are able to go into the Caucasus, soon cutting them off from the Caspian Sea and cutting Ukraine and the rest of Russia out of the Black Sea. And then eventually they're threatening Kiev, and then eventually Poland is already captured, and so is Germany. Berlin and Warsaw fall, Kaliningrad already surrenders, and then eventually Kiev and Minsk is captured at the same time, soon going into Kaliningrad, wait no, St. Petersburg, soon cutting Russia off of the whole entire European Sea, or the European lakes. They cut them off from the Kola Peninsula, and then soon they capture Moscow, and then eventually Russia surrenders. So with this, let's look at the peace treaty. So yeah, here we see basically the Roman Empire basically controlling 90% of the world. I mean, of Europe, like missing Scandinavia and the Baltics. And we also see that they pretty much took it over a lot. So here we see a lot of countries forming alliances and or joining the alliance. So here we see that the African nations are deciding to join with the Scandinavias. Soon, yeah, they pretty much all join, but then eventually, Rome, I mean, Rome decides to declare war on this alliance. But then that also means that the African nations are also in war. And we also see a lot more countries getting into the alliance. Basically, the majority of Africa, yeah, pretty much the entire continent, and the rest of the Middle East. And of course, America sees this as a threat, and Canada too, so them three also joined the alliance. So does Mexico. And then with, I mean, Greenland decides to stay out of it despite being controlled by Denmark. They decide to stay out of it, and then yeah, pretty much the whole entire world is at war with the Roman Empire. And then eventually we see countries like Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, Brazil, Argentina, Bolivia, and with the French Guyana now gaining its independence from the French, they also joined the alliance. And then over here in Asia, for the first time, I mean, I know this probably won't ever happen, but for the first time, China, North Korea, South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan will be working together to end the alliance. So here we see pretty much it's a world war. So yeah, basically a lot of a lot of countries and a lot of people are gonna die. So straight off the bat, we already see Iceland and Denmark, Baltics, and the Scandinavia countries have already surrendered. But that also meant that the African nations are able to take over the rest of the northern part of Africa. And then and then over here with the Chinese, the Koreans, Japanese, and Taiwanese are able to advance more into Central Asia. And then the Indians sees this, and then they also join the war, which will boost the manpower of the blue team by a lot. I mean, China's already boosting it since they have like 1 billion people. But with India's help, they will be able to guarantee its winnings. So they are able to advance more into Kazakhstan, soon starting to link up with the Middle Easterns. Eventually, they are now linked up, and then, yeah, pretty much it, it already looks pretty bad for Rome. But eventually, with Rome having all control of Europe, yeah, they pretty much have a lot of casualties. But then we also see the Americans and the Canadians and the South Americans coming over to Ireland and starting to liberate it. Soon, all of the British Isles is fully liberated, and then Iceland also gets liberated. And then soon going into Scandinavia, we also see some many landings in Norway. And then pretty much Denmark is fully liberated. It was a hard battle, but then eventually Copenhagen and a little bit of Sweden is fully liberated. Eventually Sweden gets Stockholm liberated once again, and same as Oslo. And then they start to going up as the Romans start to face harsh winters. And then with many Romans dying up here, we also see that the Baltics are liberated surprisingly with barely any resistance. And then we see Helsinki liberated once again, and again the Romans can't handle the winter up here just yet, so pretty much Scandinavia is fully liberated. And then basically, yeah, they pretty much already see the fall of Rome. And with Russia, I mean, with Russia now being at a puppet state, they have to send their troops, but then they decide to rebel against the Romans, making them join the war. Now, with them becoming independent from Rome and now against them, we pretty much see some separatist movements in Europe, which is also in the Iberian Peninsula in Spain and Portugal, and a little bit of France. And then we also see Greece becoming any separatist movement, and then we see some parts of France, and then a lot of Russian pockets, and eventually the Caucasus, and then some parts of Iran, and let's just throw in Turkey as well. So with them now connecting up with Greece, they're able to cut Rome into two or three or more. But with pretty much Rome already knowing they're gonna fall again, yeah, they might as well just let it happen. Just European Russia falls, Ukraine is liberated, and then all of Turkey's liberated. They're all connected. France is connected with Iberia, and so is Denmark. And then eventually, the Balkans are liberated, and then soon, and now it's just Italy left. So, with them climbing into the Italian peninsula, they already capture Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica. And then eventually, Italy is split. I mean, no, just into one. And now they're all fighting in two fronts. Now, with Rome already deciding they should surrender, they decide not to surrender. They start advancing more, soon going into San Marino, and then eventually they see Rome eventually threatening it, and then this part starts advancing more, and then eventually the Battle of Rome is about to begin. So, I think Rome is like somewhere over here. So, with Rome being highlighted, we see pretty much, yeah, they're cut off from the sea at now they're all cut off from the sea. They now pretty much, I mean, they already, some parts of Italy already surrender to the blue team, and eventually they're already in the outskirts of Rome. And then eventually, yeah, pretty much, they're holding off Rome pretty well, but then eventually we see Rome fully surrendering. So with this, let's look at the peace treaty. Treaty. Yeah, nothing changed. Nothing happened in Asia, in Africa, North or South America, and surprisingly, nothing has changed in Europe. So yeah, hopefully y'all liked the video and subscribe, and hopefully y'all liked it again, and I'll see y'all in the next one.